I, 35F, need your advice, Reddit. I'm at a crossroads in my life, facing a decision that could change everything. 4 years ago, I was unjustly ousted from my family's shipping business. It was a company my grandfather had started, and my father had grown into a successful mid-sized operation. I had just joined the company after completing my MBA, ready to contribute and eventually take over the reins. But my younger brother, 32M, had other plans. At my father's retirement party, he presented fabricated evidence suggesting I had been embezzling from the company. The documents he produced looked convincing enough at first glance, but I knew they were fake. I pleaded with my parents to hear me out, to give me a chance to prove my innocence. But they were in shock, not thinking clearly. My father, the man who had always supported me, called me a desperate college dropout in front of everyone at the party. That stung more than anything else. You see, when I first suggested dropping out of college to join the family business right after high school, it was my father who told me it would be fine. He said real-world experience working alongside him would teach me more than any business degree could. So for him to use that against me now was a low blow. I was 31 at the time, young and stupid. After being insulted and accused, I stormed out of the party, vowing never to speak to them again. I was too proud, too hurt to think about my own best interests. Instead of filing a wrongful termination lawsuit and fighting for what was rightfully mine, I let my brother's lies stand unchallenged. The family business, which was supposed to be my inheritance, went to my brother. He had just graduated college, barely 28 years old, but my father allowed him to take over the company I had been groomed to run. It was a bitter pill to swallow. I tried reaching out to a few relatives, hoping they would see reason and support me. But even they had cut me off, believing the lies my brother had spread. Word had gotten around that I had been stealing from my own family's company, and the only reason they hadn't pursued legal action was because I was their daughter. But now, I was persona non grata in the family and the industry. Finding work after that was nearly impossible. My reputation was in tatters, and I was essentially blacklisted in the shipping industry. No one wanted to hire someone they believed had stolen from their own family business. I struggled for quite some time, barely making ends meet. Looking back, I shouldn't have been surprised by my brother's actions. Our sibling rivalry had always been intense, far beyond what most would consider normal. I guess he couldn't stand the thought of working under me if he decided to join the family business, so he decided to get me fired under the worst possible accusations. But I never expected my parents to react the way they did. Even though my brother and I had always been at odds, they had never played into it before. They always tried to calm us down instead of encouraging our enmity. So for them to blindly trust him was shocking. Later, I found out that my brother hadn't been entirely stupid about his plan. He had been planting seeds of doubt in my father's mind for weeks before the big reveal. He had even bribed some of my coworkers to speak to my dad about my supposedly odd behavior and some alleged discrepancies in the company finances. Still, I really feel like they should have at least heard me out and given me a chance to clear my name instead of just insulting me and kicking me out. I should have been more assertive and a little less proud. I should have fought for what was rightfully mine instead of letting it slip through my fingers. I'm pretty confident that if I had decided to file a lawsuit against my family, I would have won. The company would have been mine, considering I had put in years of hard work and it was obvious I was being framed for a crime I hadn't committed. But I made a mistake back then by letting the ownership of the company go because I was too proud to speak to my parents. I thought that filing a lawsuit would be like begging for the ownership of the company, and I wanted to show them that it didn't matter to me. It was a really stupid move, born out of hurt and anger rather than rational thinking. I had to move away because nobody was willing to hire me back in my hometown. Here, in a new city where nobody knew me, I managed to start a small-scale delivery business of my own. I make a decent living, but it's nothing compared to the kind of life I would have had if I'd taken over the family company as my dad had originally intended. For 4 years, I've been rebuilding my life from scratch. It hasn't been easy. There were nights I cried myself to sleep, wondering how my own family could betray me like this. There were days I was tempted to call home, to try and make things right. But every time I picked up the phone, I remembered the look of disgust on my father's face, the silence of my mother, the triumphant smirk of my brother. And I put the phone down. I threw myself into my new business. It was hard at first, starting from nothing in a city where I knew no one. But slowly, I built a reputation for reliability and efficiency. My small delivery service began to grow. It's not the empire I would have inherited, but it's mine, built with my own sweat and tears. During these 4 years, I've had a lot of time to think. About family, loyalty, betrayal. About the price of pride and the value of forgiveness. I've wondered countless times if I made the right choice in walking away. But then I remember the ease with which they believed the worst of me, and I know I couldn't have stayed. And then, last week, after almost 4 years of no contact, my mother reached out to me. My father is on his deathbed. His heart problems, which were part of the reason he had to retire early, have significantly worsened. My mother told me there's very little chance he'll make it out of this alive. On the phone, she told me that over the past couple of years, they've had their doubts about the truthfulness of the documents and evidence my brother had shown them. On several occasions, they had wondered whether they had done the right thing by firing me and cutting me out of the family. But they had been too afraid to reach out to me, just in case my brother had been right about everything. And so much time had passed that it seemed pointless to carry out investigations. Now, she says, the only thing my dad wants is for me to return to the family and run the business alongside my brother. My mother was crying really bad while talking to me. She said that it was his dying wish and that she really wanted me to come back so I could speak to my dad. I was moved, I'll admit. But I'm not 31 anymore, and I'm not as easily influenced as I used to be. So I told her that I needed some time to think about it. Because 4 years have passed, and I've been through a lot, especially for someone who wasn't even culpable in the first place. It wouldn't be easy for me to go back to my family all of a sudden, and I told her that I needed her to give me some time. She agreed. The next day, after doing some thinking, I called her back. I told her that I would agree to come back to the family and meet my father, but only on one condition. I would only come back to the family and meet my father if, and only if, he agreed to kick my brother out of the business. Because there was no way on earth that I was going to agree to work alongside him after everything that had happened. He had hated me right from the beginning, but framing me for something I hadn't done, allowing me to take the fall, essentially ruining my life just because he was competitive and felt like he deserved to take over the company more than I did, was not something that I could let go of. So regardless of whether my dad was going to make it out alive or not, I wanted him to fire my brother and hand over the company to me instead. I wanted things to be the way they had originally been intended in the first place, and that would be the only way that I would agree to come back to them. My mother was shocked. She started saying that she couldn't do that it was insane that I was even demanding something like this because right now, my dad was on his deathbed, and the only thing that I could think of was the business. But can you blame me for it? I spent the last 4 years struggling to find a way out of my problems that were only caused because they decided to fire me without due diligence. And on the previous phone call, my mother herself had admitted that she and my dad had had their doubts about whether my brother had been entirely truthful or not. In spite of that, they decided not to reach out to me and only did so when my dad was almost gone. Whose fault is that? I can tell you this much, it's definitely not mine. I'm not going to feel sorry for wanting to look out for myself. My mother tried to tell me that if I put forth a condition like this, there was literally no difference between my brother and me. And I told her that she was right, there was no difference because he had forced me to stoop down to his level. And in fact, I wasn't even going to blame just him. This was something that all of them were responsible for, and now they could either do things my way, or they could leave me alone because I wasn't going to make any sacrifices anymore. I then told her exactly how much I had struggled to find a job because of the lies that had been spread about me, and how I had to relocate to another city just because of this. And in this new city where I didn't know anyone, I had to start a business on my own to get by, and I had been living hand to mouth initially. They didn't know any of this, which is why it was so easy for them to expect me to come back and pretend like this never happened. But unfortunately for them, I wasn't going to forget. So I told my mother that back when my brother had made those accusations against me, she and my father had found it very easy to let me go. Those accusations had been false. At least I'm telling the truth now, and if they can't let go of my brother for my sake, I know where I stand with them. The only befitting punishment for them would be to spend the rest of their lives without ever seeing me again. Then I hung up before my mother could say anything else. And now, I feel like I'm screwing up my life again because I could very well just let go of my pride this time and join the business and live a better life and even make things right with my father again. But there's just something that stops me. I've already been through a lot of hardships in these past 4 years. I guess I just can't let it all go to waste by forgiving them so easily. I honestly don't know if my mother is going to reach out to me again after that phone call. Part of me hopes she does, while another part dreads it. I'm torn between my desire for justice and my longing for family. The business, which was once my dream, now feels like a poisoned chalice. Am I the asshole for telling my dying father that I won't come back unless he fires my brother and hands over the company to me? Am I letting my pride and hurt cloud my judgment? Or am I justified in standing my ground after everything that's happened? I need your advice, Reddit. What should I do? Should I stick to my guns and demand what's rightfully mine, or should I let go of the past for the sake of reconciliation? Is there a middle ground I'm not seeing? Update 1. Thanks for all your advice, everyone. The situation has taken an unexpected turn, and I'm still trying to process everything that's happened. A couple of days after my conversation with my mother, I received a direct call from my father. His voice was weaker than I remembered, but still carried that authoritative tone I'd grown up with. Your mother told me about your condition, he said. Then he dropped a bombshell. I have a counterproposal for you. I'll sign over the entire company to you. I'll fire your brother, just like you asked. But in return, you can never contact me or any member of this family ever again. Not your mother, not your grandparents, not your cousins. No one. It'll be as if you never existed to us. Do you accept these terms? I was stunned. This wasn't just a hypothetical situation, he was dead serious. If I agreed, he would really sign over the company to me, but I would never get to see him or speak to him again. And not just him, I'd be cut off from my entire family. I spent hours wrestling with this decision. On one hand, getting the company would be a vindication of sorts. It would prove that I was right all along, that I deserved to run the business. On the other hand, was it worth losing my entire family over? After much internal debate, I made my decision. I called my father back. I accept your terms, I said. I'll take the company, and in return, I'll cut off all contact with the family. The silence that followed was deafening. When my father finally spoke, his voice was cold and hard. You're willing to give up your entire family for a company? You're the one who made the offer, I reminded him. I'm just accepting it. He exploded, calling me heartless and saying he was ashamed of raising a daughter who would choose money over family. His words stung, but I stood my ground. I'm ashamed that my father would believe the worst of me without any proof, I retorted. I guess we're both disappointed in each other. Over the next few days, I received a barrage of calls and messages from various family members. My mother was hysterical, my grandparents tried to guilt me, and even some of my cousins reached out to tell me how selfish I was being. The most surprising call came from my brother. He was furious, accusing me of manipulating our father and trying to steal his birthright. I simply told him that karma had finally caught up with him and hung up. Throughout all of this, I stood firm in my decision. Yes, it hurt to cut ties with my family. Yes, there was a part of me that wondered if I was making the right choice. But then I remembered the pain and struggle of the past 4 years, the betrayal I had felt, the way they had so easily discarded me based on false accusations. As the weeks passed and the reality of my decision sank in, I found myself experiencing a mix of emotions. There was relief that I would finally be vindicated, satisfaction in knowing that my brother would face consequences for his actions. But there was also a deep sadness. Despite everything, these were still the people who had raised me. I threw myself into preparations for taking over the company. My father's lawyers contacted me to begin the process of transferring ownership. As I went through the company's records, I discovered evidence that supported my innocence. It was all there, proof that the documents my brother had used to frame me were indeed falsified. I also uncovered some questionable decisions my brother had made while running the company. It was clear that his lack of experience and perhaps his greed had led to some missteps that had cost the company. I knew I had my work cut out for me to get things back on track. Throughout all of this, I kept expecting to feel triumphant, to feel like I had won. But instead, I just felt empty. The victory seemed hollow without anyone to share it with. I had the company, but at what cost? As I sit here in what used to be my father's office, looking out over the city, I can't help but wonder, did I make the right choice? Was the company worth sacrificing my family for? Or have I let my hurt and anger drive me to make a decision I'll regret for the rest of my life? I don't have answers to these questions yet. All I know is that I've made my bed, and now I have to lie in it. The company is mine, just as I always wanted. But the cost was higher than I ever imagined. So, Reddit, I guess this is the end of my story. I got what I wanted, but I'm not sure if it's what I needed. I'm the owner of a successful company, but I've lost my entire family in the process. Was it worth it? I honestly don't know. If there's one lesson I've learned from all of this, it's that sometimes, winning feels an awful lot like losing. I hope that whatever challenges you're facing in your own lives, you find a way to navigate them without losing sight of what truly matters. Wish me luck, Reddit. I have a feeling I'm going to need it. Update 2. It's been a whirlwind few weeks since my last update. I thought I'd made my decision and that was that, but it seems the universe had other plans. Last night, I received an unexpected phone call close to midnight. At first, I ignored it, but whoever was calling was persistent. They just kept calling until I finally answered out of exasperation. To my surprise, it was my grandparents on the other end of the line. These were the same grandparents who had cut me off 4 years ago when my dad threw me out of the family. Hearing their voices after all this time was surreal. My grandmother started speaking, her voice thick with emotion. "We're losing your father," she said, her words punctuated by quiet sobs. "We can't bear to see him suffer more than he already is." My grandfather chimed in, his usually strong voice now trembling. "The last conversation you had with him, it's really shaken him up. He's been crying for hours, sweetheart. We can't stand to see him like this." I felt a pang in my chest, but I steeled myself. "I'm sorry," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. But I didn't intend to upset him. I was just being honest about how I felt after everything that happened. My grandmother's voice grew more urgent. "Please, darling. Just come back and speak to him in person. It's the right thing to do." I could feel my resolve wavering, but then I remembered the past 4 years. The struggle, the loneliness, the nights I cried myself to sleep missing them. And how easily they had believed the worst of me. "I'm sorry," I repeated, my voice firmer this time. "But I can't just pretend like nothing happened. They left me in a very bad situation, and now they want me to alleviate their feelings of guilt? I didn't demand anything that wasn't rightfully mine. It's up to them whether they want to meet my conditions or not." My grandfather's voice took on a stern tone. "Families go through tough phases," he said. "But as his daughter, it's your duty to forgive your father for his mistakes and at least try to move on from it." His words ignited a spark of anger in me. "My duty?" I repeated incredulously. Was it not their duty as parents to hear me out? To investigate before believing the worst of me? Where was this talk of family duty when they threw me out based on lies? There was a heavy silence on the other end of the line. Then my grandmother spoke again, her voice softer now. "We understand you're hurt, sweetheart. But you'll regret this once your father is gone. Take this opportunity to make amends before it's too late." I took a deep breath, trying to calm the storm of emotions raging inside me. "I appreciate your concern," I said slowly. "But you don't understand. It's not just about forgiving and forgetting. They took away my livelihood, my reputation, my future. They believed the worst of me without even giving me a chance to defend myself. And now, after 4 years of struggle, they want me to come back and pretend like none of it happened?" My grandmother made one last attempt. "Think about your mother," she pleaded. "She's going to lose her husband. She'll be all alone. She needs you." I couldn't help but laugh bitterly at that. All alone? She'll have my brother. She'll have you. I was the one who was left completely alone when everyone cut me off over a bunch of lies. Where was this concern for me then? With that, I ended the call. My hands were shaking as I put down the phone, and I could feel tears pricking at the corners of my eyes. But I refused to let them fall. I was done crying over people who had so easily discarded me. The next morning, I woke up to a barrage of messages and missed calls from various family members. Cousins who hadn't spoken to me in years were suddenly messaging me, telling me how selfish and heartless I was being. Aunts and uncles were leaving voicemails, alternating between guilt-tripping and outright anger. One message, in particular, caught my attention. It was from my brother. "You think you've won," he wrote. "You'll never get the company. They'll never choose you over me. Give it up." His words only strengthened my resolve. This wasn't about winning or losing anymore. This was about standing up for myself, about not letting them manipulate me again. I spent the day ignoring the calls and messages, focusing instead on my own business. The small delivery service I had built from scratch over the past 4 years. It wasn't the empire I would have inherited, but it was mine. Built with my own sweat and tears, without any help from the family that had turned their backs on me. As I worked, I found myself reflecting on everything that had happened. The betrayal, the struggle, the loneliness of the past 4 years. But also the strength I had found within myself, the resilience I had developed. I realized that regardless of what happened with the family company, I had already proven to myself that I could succeed on my own terms. That evening, I sat down and wrote a long email. I addressed it to my parents, my grandparents, and my brother. In it, I laid out everything I had been feeling for the past 4 years. The pain of their betrayal, the struggle of starting over, the anger at being so easily discarded. But also the strength I had found, the pride in what I had accomplished on my own. I told them that I wasn't going to back down from my condition. The company was rightfully mine, and I wasn't going to settle for anything less. But I also made it clear that even if they met my condition, it wouldn't magically fix everything. Trust, once broken, takes time to rebuild. And they had broken my trust in the worst possible way. "I'm not the same person I was 4 years ago," I wrote. "I'm stronger now. More independent. I've built a life for myself without you, and I'm proud of what I've accomplished. If you want me back in your lives, you need to understand and respect that. I won't be manipulated or guilt-tripped. I won't pretend that the past 4 years didn't happen. And I certainly won't work alongside the brother who betrayed me." I ended the email with a clear statement: the ball is in your court now. You can either meet my condition and start the long process of rebuilding our relationship, or you can continue as you are. Either way, I'll be fine. I've proven that I can thrive without you. It's up to you to decide if you want to be a part of my life going forward. After sending the email, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. For the first time in years, I felt like I had truly spoken my mind to my family. No holding back, no sugarcoating. Just the raw, honest truth. I don't know what's going to happen next. Maybe they'll meet my condition. Maybe they won't. But I realize now that either way, I'll be okay. I'm not that hurt, desperate 31-year-old anymore. I'm a strong, successful 35-year-old woman who has rebuilt her life from scratch. If they choose to meet my condition and hand over the company, great. I'll turn it into something even more successful than it already is. If they don't, that's fine too. I'll continue to grow my own business, on my own terms. The future is uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, I'm not afraid of it. I'm ready for whatever comes next. Because I know now that no matter what happens with my family, I have the strength and resilience to handle it. So here I am, Reddit. Still standing, still fighting. Thank you for being there throughout this journey. Your support and advice have meant more to me than you could ever know. Wish me luck for whatever comes next. But know that, luck or no luck, I'll be just fine. Update 3. Hey Reddit, it's been a while since my last update. I've been processing everything that's happened, and I'm still not sure how I feel about it all. But I promise to keep you in the loop, so here goes. First off, the most unexpected thing happened. I got an email from my brother. Yeah, the same one who framed me and got me kicked out of the family business 4 years ago. I was so shocked to see his name in my inbox that I almost deleted the email without reading it. He wrote that he had no idea our parents had contacted me. Apparently, he only found out about it a couple of days before he sent me that email. He said he'd heard about the condition I'd set, the whole fire him and give me the company thing, and he was absolutely livid. "You've got some nerve," he wrote. "You think you can just waltz back in after 4 years and take everything I've worked for? Dream on, sis. Mom and Dad might be feeling guilty, but there's no way they'll ever choose you over me." I won. Reading his words, I felt a mixture of anger and pity. It was clear he still saw this as some sort of competition between us. He hadn't grown up at all in the past 4 years. While I'd been out here, struggling to rebuild my life from scratch, he'd been sitting pretty, running the company that should have been mine, still playing the same old games. I didn't bother responding to his email. What was the point? He'd made it clear 4 years ago what kind of person he was, and it seemed like nothing had changed. I just blocked his email address and tried to put it out of my mind. But of course, life is never that simple. A few days after my brother's email, I got a message from my dad. My heart was pounding as I opened it, half expecting another ultimatum or guilt trip. But what I read surprised me. He said he'd thought about it for a really long time. He'd considered my condition, weighed the pros and cons, and come to a decision. Are you ready for this? He's decided not to fire my brother. Things are going to remain the way they are. I know what you're thinking. But that's exactly what you didn't want. And you're right. It's not the outcome I was hoping for. But here's the thing, my dad's message didn't stop there. He apologized. Actually, genuinely apologized. For treating me badly 4 years ago, for not giving me a chance to explain myself, for believing the worst about me without any real proof. He said that he, my mom, and the rest of the family were truly sorry for what they'd done. He explained that when they first reached out to me, he had been in a rush because he wasn't sure how much longer he had left. But his doctors have told him that there's no immediate threat to his life. His health has improved a little, and it will keep improving as long as he keeps taking his medication on time. So, he doesn't think it would be right to fire my brother just because I said so. And you know what? As much as it pains me to admit it, I can see his point. Don't get me wrong, I'm still angry about what happened 4 years ago. But firing my brother now, without due process, would be doing to him exactly what they did to me back then. But here's where things get interesting. My dad said that while he can't give me the company outright, he would be ready to finance my new company. He knows that I started a business a couple of years back and that I've been running it successfully. He said he wants to invest in it, to help me grow it into something bigger. I'll be honest, this offer caught me completely off guard. On one hand, it feels like a consolation prize. Like they're trying to buy me off with this investment instead of giving me what's rightfully mine. But on the other hand, it's an opportunity. A chance to grow the business I built from scratch, with my own 2 hands. A business that, unlike the family company, has no painful memories or betrayals attached to it. I told my dad I needed some time to think about his offer. And I really do. This isn't a decision I can make lightly. There's a lot to consider. If I accept his investment, am I letting them off the hook too easily? Am I saying that what they did to me is okay as long as they throw some money my way now? But if I refuse, am I cutting off my nose to spite my face? Turning down an opportunity that could help me take my business to the next level? And then there's the question of what strings might be attached to this investment. Would my dad try to interfere in my business decisions? Would he expect me to reconcile with my brother? Would this be the first step towards pulling me back into the family fold, whether I'm ready for that or not? I've spent the last few days mulling over all of this. I've made pros and cons lists, I've run the numbers, I've even tried meditating to clear my head. Spoiler alert, I'm terrible at meditating. And I still don't have a clear answer. What I do know is this: I'm proud of the business I've built. It may not be as big as the family company, but it's mine. I built it from nothing, with no help from anyone. It's a testament to my resilience, my skills, and my determination. And part of me is tempted to tell my dad thanks, but no thanks, and continue growing my business on my own terms. But another part of me sees the potential in his offer. With that kind of investment, I could expand my operations, hire more people, maybe even start competing with larger companies. It's an exciting prospect, I can't deny that. As for my relationship with my family, well, that's still complicated. My dad's apology was a start, but it doesn't erase 4 years of pain and struggle. Trust, once broken, isn't easily rebuilt. And while I appreciate that they're trying to make amends now, I'm not sure I'm ready to let them back into my life fully. For now, I've decided to take some time. I told my dad I'd think about his offer and get back to him. I'm going to focus on running my business, on living my life. I'm not going to let this decision consume me the way the fallout from the original betrayal did 4 years ago. I've learned a lot in these past 4 years. I've learned that I'm stronger than I ever thought possible. I've learned that I can build something from nothing. I've learned that while family is important, it's not everything. And most importantly, I've learned that I don't need anyone's approval or support to be successful. Whatever I decide about my dad's offer, I know I'll be okay. If I accept it, I'll use it to grow my business bigger than they ever imagined. If I decline it, I'll continue to build my success on my own terms. Either way, I win. So that's where things stand now, Reddit. I'm still here, still fighting, still succeeding. My family drama isn't over. In fact, it feels like it's entering a new chapter. But this time, I'm facing it from a position of strength. I'm not that hurt, desperate 31-year-old anymore. I'm a successful business owner who knows her worth. Thank you all for your support throughout this journey. Your advice and encouragement have meant the world to me. I don't know what the future holds, but I do know this: whatever comes my way, I can handle it. Wish me luck, Reddit. And remember, no matter what life throws at you, you're stronger than you think. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise.